Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Nighttime Show, live from the Hollywood Improv. As always, we have producer and head writer Matt Walker. We're lucky enough today to have Stephen Kramer Glickman's childhood friend, Saba Javadani. Our amazing, incredible guest today is executive producer and head writer of 144 episodes of Beverly Hills 90210, Charles Rosen. And of course, your host, the man who can't stop smiling because his face was just made that way, Stephen Kramer Glickman. Hey guys, how we doing?
I miss Mike Black.
I miss Mike Black too. He'll be back soon. How are you, Matt? You doing well?
Doing great.
Good. You look good.
Thank you.
Look skinny as always.
That is true.
Everything been all right? You doing all right?
Yeah, doing good. Looking forward to the next Nighttime Show Live.
Yeah, Nighttime Show Live. Next one is August 27th. A lot of wonderful people going to be on that show, and our last one was really incredible. Fresh Brothers Pizza came out, did 22 pizzas for the entire audience. We gave away pizza to the entire room. And
there was a line down the street to get in.
It was insane. We were completely and totally sold out. Fireball Whiskey was there. We gave away Fireball to the audience. It was a huge big night.
Pokeballs.
Yeah, it was a big night. And
Pikachu showed up.
Yeah, and you know who else showed up? My childhood friend, who I've known since I'm 13, Saba Javadani's here.
Hi, Steve.
Hey, buddy, how are you?
Is that a real last name, Saba?
No, it's not.
Saba is a very handsome Persian fellow. We've known each other since junior high school, where we were both bullied a lot for being giant nerds. Saba less so, though, because people like Saba.
Yes.
I was outlandish and annoying and ran around wearing stupid clothes, and I think
I believe that wholeheartedly.
Yeah. Saba, how are you? Doing good?
Good. My voice sounds really good on this.
Yeah,
I like this.
It's very
crisp.
Saba is single, and so is Matt. So, ladies, pick your brand.
So, ladies, if there's any seniors out there, Saba's available for you.
Saba dates all sorts of women. All right,
Not just old women.
Not just
Occasionally old women.
Matt sometimes dates horrendous singers. We were listening to his ex-girlfriend sing today, and it's a living nightmare. We need to jump right into this, guys. It's a really big deal that we have him here because I don't know about you guys, but I grew up watching this TV show, Beverly Hills 90210, and it influenced everything that I knew about what it was like to be cool. It really did. I was like, you got to have sideburns.
Well, that
right?
explains everything.
Right. I was like, you got to have good hair. You know, and then, you know, like they had so many great cast members on the show, and it was such an interesting show with so many different levels and a lot of crazy stuff. I learned a lot in watching the show, and it was an amazing show, and as a big part of my childhood. But 144 episodes. The executive producer, ladies and gentlemen, Charles Rosen's here. Come on.
Yeah, that'd be me.
How are you, buddy?
Very well, thanks.
Dude, it's so incredible to have you here with us. You and I got to work together recently with Gabrielle Carteres, yes?
Yes.
For a charity event that was a hilarious and very fun time. It was a really good time. Did you have fun?
Absolutely. It was a live podcast of one of the episodes, the one Donna Martin graduates.
It's so classic. Such a classic episode.
We filled up a theater in Beverly Hills, and we got a lot of laughs and a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah.
Now, does Charles know about what happened with your shoelaces?
No, Charles, do you know about what happened? We're standing in line. We're you and me and the woman who played Miss Teasley,
Denise Dowse.
Yeah, so amazing. And then the rest of the cast, who were all playing the young kids on the show, they were all cast members from like Pretty Little Liars and from Vampire Diaries and from all these amazing shows. It was insane. Like they were so talented. Those kids were amazing and very good looking. So it's you and me and Denise and of course Gabrielle Carteres, who is the president of SAG-AFTRA. Mm-hmm. And she's standing behind me and she goes, Stephen? And I go, yes, Madam President. Like I was like very super nervous to talk to her. And she goes, your shoes are untied. And I go, oh. And she goes, I got it, and gets down on her knees and ties my shoes backstage. And people are like looking, and I'm like, what is happening right now? I'm like, okay, first of all, just as a fan of her and a fan of the show, I was sweating and panicking that this was happening. And then, of course, the amount of regard that I hold for her as the president of SAG-AFTRA of my union, like, she was so insane.
She earned your vote forever.
Oh, I will vote for her forever. She was incredible.
Well, service is a big part of being
Yes.
the president, and there's no task too small, clearly.
Yeah, her daughter was like, that's my mom just being a mom. Like, that's what she does. You know, she'll just tie
It's the
people's
old
shoes.
political thing. You know, you kiss babies, you tie shoes. That's what you
Maybe
do as
that's
a
what-
politician.
When I was doing the show, and I'd come in on a Monday morning, just dragging my ass because we had so many episodes to do, Gabrielle would always say, we used to call Gabrielle the adult, because she'd always say, hi, how are you? How was your weekend?
What?
And I always said the exact same thing.
Really?
Was it a weekend? All ran together. But she was incredible. Also, she was very driven towards charitable activities before it was vogue. So she used the power of the stardom of the kids, I remember once, to get a van from Dodge or one of the car companies that was given then to a like Meals on Wheels kind of thing for AIDS
God.
people. I mean, and it was
Wow.
all her, and she's like, in her 20s.
What was she the as far as the cast like ages of the cast members? Was she the older of the cast members?
Well, she took a lot of shit for that, I think.
Yeah.
The Gabby the granny and all of that, and,
Oh,
and particularly, I felt, and she and I've talked about this, after she gave birth and came back, she looked like a mother, and she didn't look like a sophomore in college. But
Sure.
I felt she really in the high school she really just projected the essence of the character, and that's all you can ever ask for.
yeah, I know, absolutely. Now, did you start on this show from day one? Were you there from the beginning, or when did you come in?
Well, I wasn't involved with the pilot.
Got
The
it.
series was created by Darren Starr, and the original executive producers were Aaron Spelling, of course, but also a company called Propaganda, which was the biggest, coolest advertising company, and they did a lot of music videos. I guess that was so some of their frontline people. I could just start and stop with David Fincher, but we go
Oh, my
on.
God.
Leslie Linka Glatter, just a lot of people who've had really wonderful. What's his name? Michael Bay.
Oh,
So
my God,
this was
really?
really a powerhouse. It was a very cool group of people, and there was always that dichotomy of here's this kind of a company that did all the post-production for Twin Peaks, and at the same time they're doing an Aaron Spelling show about high school in Beverly Hills. There was a little bit of a disconnect going
Wow.
on. But I came in at after the pilot was shot.
Yeah.
I usually say that I got the job for 3 different reasons.
Yeah.
One is because I went to Beverly Hills High School, and this was a series about Beverly Hills, so they figured I might remember something.
Amazing.
Second, I was available. I had just come off of Northern Exposure, and there was a period of time for me to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And third, no one else wanted the job, so they gave it to me, a first-time showrunner. I spent most of my career writing television movies and pilots. The pilots weren't made, and after a while, most of the television movies were made.
Right.
So I was really known much more as that. I hadn't been on too many series. Certainly,
you wrote a little on St. Elsewhere, right?
I did a little St. Elsewhere,
Yeah.
and those were the same guys who did Northern Exposure.
Sure.
I met all of them back at the White Shadow.
Wow.
Oh, love the White Shadow.
We
Amazing.
go back to the White Shadow. Yes, we do.
Yeah, White Shadow. Matt, real quick before we continue, I had a weird thing recently. I had another fireball moment.
Fireball moment?
Yeah, like a fireball moment. That's like when you drink fireball whiskey and then just, something amazing and extraordinary happens. Like 'cause when you drink fireball whiskey, you never know
Yeah,
what's gonna
crazy
happen.
stuff happens.
Crazy
Right.
stuff happens. Yeah, no, it's true. So, we were doing the nighttime show live and having this, great time, and everybody was having fun. And as the night was coming to an end here at the, Hollywood Improv, I did 2 shots, at the bar. Really great stuff. And of Fireball, and then I started wandering to my car, but somehow I got lost on Melrose. I turned down a corner, I turned another corner, I turned a different way, and I ended up in this forest, which I guess now is a park that's nearby, but it was a much bigger park than I've ever seen before. So now I'm wandering through this park at like 2:00 in the morning. It's very, very dark, and I can see the trees, and you can hear, everything buzzing. And I swear to you, out of nowhere, I see Bigfoot.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like the Bigfoot.
The Bigfoot. He comes.
Did he look like Harry and the Hendersons?
He was
Bigfoot?
just like that.
Wow.
Like very kind of ape-like, but very, very tall, really huge muscles and gigantic. And he comes around the corner, and I froze. I was very scared. All right.
Yeah, I think if you see Bigfoot, you got to stop.
Oh yeah. I stopped. I got real scared, and I look over, and I go, oh my gosh. I go, Bigfoot. Are you Bigfoot?
Yes. Bigfoot.
That's what he said.
Yeti Bigfoot.
I said, "Oh wow, hey there, Bigfoot. It's a pleasure to meet you."
Pleasure to meet you. No pictures.
Oh,
I don't. Everyone wants a selfie. I don't have time. I can't. They put on the Instagram the whole thing, and they always the wrong filter.
Do they face swap with you?
Always. I can't go.
They do. They face swapped with him.
I can't go 5 minutes without the face swap. I don't like it.
And you don't even think you wouldn't even think the app would be able to recognize the face because it's so enormous
the
and
kids,
different.
They have no class. They just take the picture. They don't. Hi, how are you? My name's Marty. What have you? Nothing. They just
take a picture.
Start flashing.
They take a picture right away. It's so rude.
Oh, the photo bomb. Don't get me started on the photo bomb.
It's too much. Sometimes they do fingers over your head. They do bunny ears.
I'm trying to eat a unicorn, and halfway through, these kids come up and they get behind me with the thing, and we're gonna hashtag. I can't have it.
So basically, Matt. I was very hungry, and so I turned to Bigfoot and I said, "Hey, Bigfoot, do you want to maybe go to Cantor's?"
I would love to go to Cantor's.
Yeah, it turns out Bigfoot is like a huge fan of Cantor's.
Of course.
Yeah, he said his favorite kind of fish is gefilte fish. Gefilte fish. Yeah, so we go there. We have some gefilte fish. We have a nice matzo ball soup.
A nice soup.
I had one more shot of Fireball whiskey, and out of nowhere, I'm not kidding you, he vanished.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm telling you, Fireball whiskey, you never know what kind of adventures you're going to have. All right, let's get back to the show.
I don't pay the check.
Yes.
I love it. No. So once you started working on the show, what did they tell you when you came in? Like, how did they explain the show to you?
Well, they sent me the show, and the show was 2 hours, and I was really tired from doing Northern Exposure. We had small kids. I was a dad, and I fell asleep watching the pilot. So I had my choice: go back and keep watching the pilot, or write the script of Northern Exposure that I'm being paid to do. So I went there, wasn't really thinking the show was for me, and yet my agent called the next day and said, Aaron Spelling really wants to meet you. And I figured that anytime you can meet a titan, a real legend, why not do it? And I had done that throughout my career with no expectation that I would be doing this show. But then, truthfully, and this could sound very Hollywood, but it was the truth, then my agent told me how much they would pay me to do this show if I would do it. Sounded pretty good to me, certainly much more than I had done with the movie, something television, and the pilots. And I went in to meet Aaron, and he was really smart in a lot of ways. I mean, we had a very complicated relationship. Most relationships Aaron Spelling had were complicated. But what was really interesting about him at that point was that this was a year that there was a lot of high school shows going on, being ordered. Fresh Prince of Bel-Air was starting. There was Hull High on Disney, Kenny Ortega, kind of the precursor to Glee kind of thing, music and dancing. And And then there was something called Parker Lewis Can't Lose. And then there was Ferris Bueller Days Off.
Yeah.
And then
Was Saved by the Bell back then?
it was on daytime, but
Okay, yeah.
a morning, but yes. And then there's this little show from Aaron Spelling on this fledgling network.
Yeah.
So, it wasn't the top billing. And Aaron had looked at the pilot and really let the creative forces from Propaganda kind of control a lot of the aesthetic. Darren Star can speak more intelligently about that than me. But he kind of knew that he couldn't out-hip the room. He couldn't do MTV. He didn't like MTV. And so he came to me, who was known as writing social drama for television, and said, I want the show to be more. I want to deal with the issues teenagers deal with.
Yeah.
Well, that was music to my ear. I used to refer myself at that time, and looking back at it, I think it's apt, as a highly paid propagandist.
Sure.
Oh, you're going to give me a show and I can put messages in about social issues? Oh, this sounds pretty good.
That sounds great.
So Aaron asked me to go back and watch the show again. And I said to Aaron, okay, I'll watch it. And after I finish it, if after 1 hour, I'll give myself 1 hour to come up with 10 ideas and that I think would make for good episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And if if I can do that, I'll do the show.
Great.
So my wife, who you met the other night, Karen,
very nice.
she who wrote a lot best episodes for the show, I think she and Darren did some really good stuff. She and I watched the pilot, and we ended it, and it took us 58 minutes to get the 10th episode, but we got it.
Wow.
And I walked in, took the job, and what I remember most about that first, Aaron Spelling's office was huge. It was like a football field, and it had lots of, you didn't know where to sit. There were so many couches, and this all with what you'd expect, cigarettes in waiting, because it was a different, if you sat here, you could smoke a cigarette. If you sat over there, there were all, always bunches of cigarettes and that, and you could eat it, they'll bring anything out to you, his butlers and things. And I'm talking about the Warner Hollywood Studios.
Oh, amazing.
And there I am in for my first time. Excuse me. And he had a guy who was running his company at the time. And the company had, Aaron Spelling's years of television were really the 70s and the 80s. He had an exclusive contract for ABC. And it was known as not the American Broadcasting Company, but Aaron's Broadcasting Company. It's so many shows, Charlie's Angels and Love Boat and all of them. Dynasty, all of them, And then it went down to nothing. And so the only thing he had was this pilot up for Beverly Hills 90210, which at that point was called The Class of Beverly Hills. It was largely done as a favor by Barry Diller to his old friend and mentor, Aaron Spelling. And so there was this kind of air of despair under the surface, but that the best times had passed.
Got it. Yeah.
That he was no longer current. And Hollywood, all those producers that couldn't get their shows on at ABC and this was gleeful that this era had passed.
They finally have a shot.
And Spelling was the counter to what I'll call MTM. The more intelligent shows, the stuff that Bochco did, and the comedies of Taxi and Cheers and all that stuff. He was not that. He was more, bright colors and establishing shots and sexy, but not sexual. Kind of
sure. Yeah, I get that.
Different. The whole aesthetic. Anyway, the guy who had no other shows, his name is Jules Heimovitz. He puts me into. He says, "Come when you're done with Aaron, come see me." And I go to see him, and I sit down, and he says to me, "Chuck, I'm going to say something to you right now that I can tell by just meeting you that no one has ever said to you before. You are management." Because I'd always been labor. Excuse me, I was a reporter, I was a writer, and this kind of thing. And I was surprised that I actually took to being management. Since I was trying to smash the state for so many years, it was
Right,
I am the state. Okay.
Wow.
So it was a very interesting thing. We were the lowest license fee in television, meaning we had less money to spend than anybody else. We were non-union. Who does a non-union television show in Los Angeles for prime time?
What?
Well,
Were the cast was
no.
non-union?
When you do non-union,
You mean non-union crew?
Non-union crew.
Oh,
no,
wow.
not IATSE.
Got it.
And to do that in Los Angeles is kind of really kind of a dare,
Yeah.
especially then. And it was this feeling that we can do low-budget television non-union and we don't need them. Well, they went, they started picketing us like the second week.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
And it really got down to a vote by our crew after about the 5th or 6th, 7th episode. And I remember Shannon Doherty addressed the crew and saying, we're with you and right on and strike. She was very pro-worker, although, she's a Republican. But nonetheless, she was with them. And I stood up and said, guys, we are the 3rd lowest rated show on television. If you go and vote for a strike, you think we're going to get ordered back? We're not. This is it. This is, so you really have the fate of the show in your hands. And they voted to stay non-union by 1 vote.
Wow.
The next year, they voted to become a union by 1 vote. And our producer, wonderful guy who came in after the 6th episode of the first year, a fellow named Paul Wagner, who he basically said, guys, if you're going to be union, then I can work with anybody we want, anybody on the list. And out of that group, which was a good group, only 1 guy was invited back to work the next year. And he was invited back because he played golf with Jason Priestley.
Wow.
That's the world.
Now, you mentioned you were a reporter before you did any of this. How did that start with you?
Well, I was really groomed to be a lawyer. I thought I would be a lawyer. And I got a job. I went to Washington. I went to school at Berkeley.
Okay.
And I went to Washington, D.C. as an intern. And I had pretensions of wanting to write. And yet I would read the laws of the land. And as I said to my dad when I got back from Washington, there's no adjectives in the law. It's not didn't light me up too much.
Yeah.
So but I started working for my college newspaper, the Daily Cal. I went to graduate school. My dad really wanted me to go to graduate school, and I did. It was a good experience. I worked for WBUR, which is the NPR affiliate of Boston, and all things considered, it just become national. The busing was going on. I got to do a lot of stuff, and came. But I still knew that I kind of wanted to be a scriptwriter. In fact, when I graduated from Berkeley, I stayed up there that summer to kind of play softball and just transition into life. But what I did is I wrote every morning a screenplay because I wanted to see that I have the discipline to write. The talent is fungible. You either you have that or not. But can you be by yourself in a room writing all day?
Yeah.
And I learned, hey, I can't do that. I am a misanthrope. I don't like people, so I can be by myself. It's fine. And so I knew that coming back, I had made a documentary film. It was in Filmex, was the LA Film Festival. It was chosen for that. It was on public television. It was about a blues singer. It was a lot of fun and great to make it. And I wanted to make more documentaries. There was no business. Unlike now, I'm so envious of all these documentary filmmakers who get to really grapple with subject and do such great stuff.
Like at that time, I remember Ken Burns' first documentary was 1980, done about the Brooklyn Bridge, and it took him probably a good 12 years before he had anything that really sort of blew up with the Civil War when that one finally came out and was a big deal.
Well, he was based in Boston, and he was making a documentary this summer. I was, and we both rented equipment from the same place.
Wow.
And talked with him a few times. Yeah, no, he was Boston-based. Boston, a pretty small community. And
I imagine the film community there is not too large.
Not that big at that time, especially. Anyway, come back to Los Angeles, and there's nothing for me to do documentaries. And my dad was a pediatrician. He was a prominent doctor. And I realized to start my career, I had to camp out in his waiting room. But at least not quite. But he had Michael Eisner and a few other people who really were power brokers. But one of them was a really nice man who was the showrunner of like Barnaby Jones.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so I met him and I said, okay, so you'll give me a Barnaby Jones. And I was like, well, I don't know if I'd do that. But one thing he did say to me, he said, if you can write news, you can write scripts.
Yeah.
And I believed him, wrote a couple, and then I got a calling card script. I got something that was an article in the Village Voice about a little boy who sold pot on the street and a woman who tried to help him. Incredible prose, kind of Charles Dickens-esque. And I wrote this movie. I thought it was a feature starring Terry Garr in my mind.
Wow.
And, the feature people would read it, have these meetings with the feature stuff, and very, very, very cool to be there. And they all said to me, this is a really good script, and we'll read anything else you write.
Wow.
And the television people who read it said, can you do this rewrite starting on Tuesday? So I gave up working for the California Apparel News, where I was working as a freelance writer because I had already written, I thought, a pretty good script. I wasn't going to write a better script than that one. So if that one's not going to get me work, I would probably go into my brother-in-law's business.
I love it. I love it. Well, I want to take a walk through this cast list, because here's the thing about this show. Every single person that was a cast member on the show, like the main, we'll say like there's like 10 or 15 people that were on the show that are iconic people. They have become iconic characters to television. They really have. And if I see them in public, I immediately start sweating and get very nervous and want to talk to them. I just saw Luke Perry in San Diego at Comic-Con. He had a giant beard. And I was like, what's up, beard brother? And he was like, hey, man. And we talked for like about 2-3 minutes. He was super, super nice. And I've had a lot of interactions with a bunch of these people because of my sister's book, Limelight, which you read and you spoke to her about. So let's just take a walk through some of these folks. Let's start with Jenny Garth, because I've never met her, but she's a really incredible, seems like a very incredible, very sweet person. What was your first impressions of her? Any fun?
If you think about, if you know the show, I mean, Kelly Taylor was supposed to be a snob and a mean girl.
Right.
How can you make Jenny Garth a mean girl? She's not a mean girl. Right. She was a country girl, I think, at that point. She had come out. She was the blonde you're going to fall in love with. She really was the all-American blonde. I remember in one of the scenes that she did in the pilot, she wore like bike pants, and that was brand new, wearing that out in public. And she was really cute, really nice, and a real trooper. I mean, the one story that I know we often tell is, the night where she and Dylan are on the beach and Sophie Hawkins is playing, and you realize they're kind of a couple. Damn, I wish you'd be my lover, and Brenda's in Europe and all of that.
Oh yeah.
She and Dylan were on
jet skis.
Jet skis. They were doing a jet ski thing up at Paradise Cove, and it wrapped around Jenny. And she almost drowned. I mean, she had to really go to an emergency room and all that. And then she came back and did that scene. That is Jenny. That's my memory of Jenny Garth. And we had a nice, and I'll put a coat on this on some of this when we talk about the cast. In 2013, it marked 20 years from when the class of West Beverly High, class of 93, graduated. So we had kind of a mini reunion. I live in Venice, and some people came down, and really to meet, so I could meet their children, and they could meet the little children they knew, and Lindsay Rosen and my others. And so it was a really nice occasion. And we got to meet Jenny's daughters. And she's a really good mother, too, I don't know if she's always, it's very hard to be an actress and an actor at all. And especially when you become that point where you start playing the mother roles, and there are fewer and fewer roles. I don't know if she's going through that now or what, but she was a real pleasure. And look, Dylan had to choose between Brenda and Kelly. Who are you going to choose? Yeah, I would choose. I would be with his choice. So
yeah, no, she did. She played. Did she play the? She would play her big sister. She played what's her name? Amanda Bynes' big sister.
Right.
On that show.
Yes.
That they did together. What I Like About You, or about What About You? Is that what it was called? What About What I Like About You? Yeah, What I Like About You.
Right.
But yeah, watching her
Before
translation.
Amanda Bynes was a crazy person.
Yes, before Amanda Bynes lost her absolute brain. Who I still love. I still love Amanda Bynes, and we would love to have her on the show. If you're out there, Amanda, please come down.
She's not crazy enough to listen to this podcast.
Amanda,
she hasn't hit rock bottom yet.
Amanda, I still have your shoes. All right, I still have them. All right. She left them at my house. All right. So here's the thing. No, Jenny, that is such a tricky situation, turning into becoming the mother role and playing a role like that, and having to leave being the being the ingenue, because she really was the ingenue on that show. And it's neat that they kind of cast her against type a little bit, because if they wanted her to be, the mean girl. But what's kind of...
Well, I don't think they cast her against type. They cast her for her cute looks.
Yeah.
And one thing that I think can work sometimes is that you write for the personalities of your actors.
Right.
You write what the actors can do. And so she, really pretty early on, our 6th episode was called Perfect Mom, and she realizes that her... mother has fallen back on addiction, and she has to deal with that. Darren Star wrote the script. It was really a terrific one. It was also the one in that first year we were mandated to do. It's the Brandon episode, the Brenda episode, the Brandon episode, the Brenda episode, and all of a sudden, pretty early on, we throw in a Kelly episode.
Yeah.
So it rose her stock, and I think
that's such a great feeling as an actor too. When you come in, you find out this episode's more about you than it is about anybody else. Like, I had that happen twice while doing this kid show on Nickelodeon, and like, it was probably the greatest day of my life. And I walked in, they're like, "This episode's all about you, buddy," and I'm like, "What?" And then you have to and then suddenly it's like, "Oh, I'm gonna get hit in the face with a bunch of pies. There's gonna be so much fun stuff to do." It was great. Let's jump to Ian Ziering. I've only had one interaction with Ian Ziering. We almost got into a car accident together on Sunset Boulevard. It was like 1997.
Were there flying sharks involved?
No, yes.
No flying sharks.
But we've only met like once or twice. But I think the guy is pretty. He seemed like a fun kind of wacky guy, kind of like a little bit of a troublemaker. A little bit. Am I reading into that?
Well, Ian. Well, his character that he played, Steve Sanders, I used to call a North of Sunset homeboy. And, he played the rich boy. But I really admire Ian. I mean, right at the start, the spelling company was looking to save money. So they kind of demoted him in the first year. He wasn't even, he wasn't being paid to be in every episode. And he wasn't happy about that. You would never know that from the performances that he did. And what I loved most about Ian's craft is it's hard for me to imagine anybody in that kind of context that could do better ad-libs. The funny things at the end of the scenes, all Ian Ziering.
Wow.
Jason was okay with it. Luke needs to study improv. Back then, should have studied a little more improv. but Ian was terrific. He came out of Broadway. He's a song and dance guy.
What?
So post 90210, he fell into that. Oh, you're Steve Sanders. You can't play another role. You're only Steve Sanders. You're only going to be Steve Sanders. And and it was hard for him, I believe. But I know what changed everything was him being on Dancing with the Stars, because he could dance.
Yeah.
And even back then, he was very good at it. Whereas Priestley never wanted to dance. He felt awkward.
Yeah.
Good on hockey with the hockey stick and the ice skates. But
yeah, no, we should talk about him. Let's Jason Priestley.
Yes.
Yeah, Jason Priestley, please. such a talented guy, and now such a phenomenal director. He's out there working, kicking ass.
Yeah.
What was your relationship like with him?
Well, Mr. Spelling used to call Jason the quarterback. He really was the leader, and he really created kind of the tone of the show. So what was some of the nicest things that would get back to us when actors would do the show, particularly guest star actors and stuff, is that this is the friendliest set. It was such a friendly set. He did that. He would walk up to people and say, kids would be frightened, especially after we became a hit, and people, I'm on 902. Hi, I'm Jay. He was very afraid. He liked the crew.
Yeah.
He was always, though, he liked to race. He liked to cars and hockey. I mean, he smoked a lot of cigarettes, and I think even when his lungs collapsed, was pretty much a young man with that. And, he always took it to the edge. But I enjoyed, the truth is that what I brought most to this party in terms of the writing or character formation is kind of, I'm a combination of Brandon and Steve. A lot more Brandon than Steve, but there's a part of me that has that larceny.
Right, yeah.
With Dylan, the only thing I really brought to that character for my own life is the love of the ocean. I gave it to him.
Sure, I get that. We had Casper Van Dien on the show.
That's what I heard.
Yeah, and first thing when we asked him about 90210, he was like, yeah, I thought those guys were gonna be a couple assholes, because so handsome. They, they're so famous. I showed up. They couldn't wait to shake my hand. Jason Priestley came right up to me. Hi, I'm Jason Priestley. I was like, yeah, I know who you are, And then Luke Perry came up and was like, let's hang out. Let's go get a Coke. Like everybody. He was like, everyone was so nice to me. It was like the nicest set to be on.
Well, it was a sanctuary. It was their home. You really, it was before social media, and everybody points that out.
Oh, yeah.
But nonetheless, they really couldn't go outside in the same way. And you have long days with the television series, and so they would spend, 12 hours a day together, and they wouldn't go run to lunch. They wouldn't do they'd all pretty much stay in our little suite of warehouses out in Van Nuys where we shot the show.
And
right?
you were doing 29 episodes a season at that time, right? So it's like
after the first year, yes.
So that's basically like an extra 8 weeks of work or 9 weeks of work that people on other TV shows weren't.
We crammed 6.5 hours of television into 5 years.
Wow.
Oh.
And it was really, I used to call the writers and the people, the production staff who worked, I called them the triathletes of television.
Yeah.
How many hours?
How many years?
6.5
years.
6.5 years
Right.
into 5 years of television.
Oh my God. That's outrageous.
So it was glorified point and shoot to some respect.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't have as much time. You couldn't take as much care. And you had to, if you think about like the soaps that that are really wild and crazy, like, Melrose was that.
Sure.
The OC had that element.
Models Inc.
I'm just
Models Inc.
I used to watch that one.
I have when we get to the point, I have a great Models Inc. story. But
Awesome.
But all of those shows were just like, let's just do it as crazy and as fast as possible, and we'll do this story and this story, and they just move it. It's like narrative on steroids. We, because we had so many episodes to do, had to hold everything back. So the plots moved much slower forward. So because of that, you're holding things back. You can do more character development, and that was, I think, a plus of all those episodes.
Now, I read that when you first started on the show, you went to Spelling and the network and said, hey, here's the plots for the first 12 episodes, and it was a whole serial thing. And then they came back and said, we want it to be more episodic than serialized. Is that really true that that's sort of how it came down, or?
Yes, it was very interesting that we saw the show in serialized form, and we turned in our episodes, and the network executive, who I really shouldn't, Paul Stupin, Dawson's Creek, the producer, at that point was Fox's guy, and he started to criticize what we had done and explained that to me, because I didn't really have that much experience, that I didn't really know how to do serialized drama. And he brought up how they used to do it on St. Elsewhere.
Wow.
Excuse me, I was the first year of St. Elsewhere. I know how we did it, and this is how we did it.
Yeah.
But nonetheless,
Shit.
it's their dime, and we had to adjust. And I remember Darren Starr and I driving out to Malibu. Mr. Spelling had a place out there. If you're driving up the Pacific Coast and you see one brick house that you don't understand why anyone would build a brick house on the beach, that was the Spelling house.
Amazing.
And but we were there trying to sort things out, and we basically did. I mean, we basically, if you think of those first 6 episodes, there was one about a surfer girl, Surfer Betty. There was where we introduced Luke Perry's character. We've introduced Dylan. There was a shoplifting episode. There was a basketball episode. There was Brandon's girlfriend comes. There's a thing about there was a cheating in school, and then the Perfect Mom episode that I alluded to with Kelly Taylor.
Sure, yeah.
So we had those 6 episodes with beef stories and this, and we're feeling pretty good about them, right? So we turn them into the network, and on July 3rd, I was on the telephone with the network, Paul Stupin, and we went over every one of these episodes, these little stories, and they were just like, here's the A story paragraph, here's the B story paragraph, and here's the little runner kind of thing. And we fought over every one.
Oh.
And it was like debate going back and forth and debate. And so he says, ultimately, he doesn't say anything. And he said, well, let's move on to the next one. Let's move on to the next one. So it's a 2-hour conversation.
Had the scripts already been written at this point?
No, this is just the
Okay.
stories. But because we ended and he didn't say, like, wrap it up and this is what's going to happen, I called all my writing staff and said, start writing your scripts. Excuse me, start writing your stories. And 2 weeks later, we turned in 6 story outlines. Now, there were 2 other shows that Fox had, dramas. One was called Against the Law, and the other was called DEA. You don't know them because they had script problems. They couldn't do enough scripts because Barry Diller's Fox would meddle in those episodes a lot. But because we had our story outlines and Mr. Spelling liked them, okay, so we got to write scripts and we weren't shut down. You know, one of the things we were talking about that I came to the show through Northern Exposure and St. Elsewhere, and what we learned, from those experiences, and I remember Josh Brand telling me this, is that you can't make scripts your problem. Write the scripts, get the scripts done early, put them over here, because producing a television show is a difficult task, especially an hour show where you have the trucks and you're going out and all of that you don't want to keep screwing around with the scripts.
Yeah.
So that was one thing that we were able to survive right from the start.
Yeah, that's so smart. Can we throw in a little question about Brian Austin Green?
Sure.
What tell us about this kid?
Well, he was the kid when he started out, right?
Yeah, he was
the freshman boy, and
he was dancing. He was doing the hip hop dancing.
Yes, right, at the prom.
Prom.
And we realized that we didn't know he could dance like that.
Yes.
And he was really cute, and he wanted to be more involved with the mainstream. And he had another his sidekick on the show, nice guy, who played the character of Scott Scanlon.
Okay, now that storyline changed my entire life. This storyline with Scott Scanlon was like, it was one of those. I have it starred as like one of the most influential episodes of the show.
Thank you.
In the show's history.
That's a Rosen episode. My wife and I wrote that one, and I'll tell you how it came about. Well, we had a big cast. And Mr. Spelling looks at the cast, and they wanted to. We had no money to spend, and by the second year, they still said we didn't have very much, and they wanted us to reduce the cast. And I said, if you're going to do that, and you want the character Scott Scanlon gone, let me kill him. And So what was interesting about that is that we kind of built that, in the summer that David got to be with all the popular kids and Scott was off in Oklahoma with his grandparents and they had split up and it was a birthday and he dies in a gun accident. It is the only time that and I give Sandy Grushow and Aaron Spelling credit for this, it's the only time the two of them, Fox and the production company, came and said, we don't want you to do this episode. And I said, we have to do it. And this is why I was very passionate about it. As Mr. Spelling once snarled at me during the first year, I'd be nothing without my passion. And he's not wrong. Mm-hmm. And I, really, really cared about this. And it came about because there was a gun accident at the Disneyland Hotel on prom night that I read about like a month before. And I thought that was the worst thing I had heard in a long time. Like your prom is what? Oh, our prom was great. Yeah, when someone got murdered or a gun accident. So I wanted to use it as such. And also I am not a card-carrying member of the NRA and wasn't back then and was a card-carrying member of the Brady handgun group. And so it really mattered to me to be able to incorporate a social issue into the television show without being a preacher about it. And
Right.
that's the fine line. So here is a kid having a birthday, and can he get the popular kids to come, and his mother's in the middle of it, and all this stuff is going on. And in the middle of it, he wants to show his friend his gun and is twirling it around, and he gets shot by his father's gun. Well, how many accidents do we have in the house?
Yeah.
And then there was the whole thing, he committed suicide. No, he didn't commit suicide. It was a gun accident.
Yeah. No.
Just like Law and Order, ripped from the headlines.
Well, but here's the thing about what was so significant about that episode, and I really wish because Deadwood did it as well. Milch did it on Deadwood. Is they introduce a character, they have everybody like this character, and you think that everybody's safe on the show. Now they do it all the time. They kill off a character, but not on. Like on Deadwood, we expected that someone would die at some point, but not on Beverly Hills 90210. This was a fun, young high school kids. You don't think someone in that cast is suddenly going to be dead.
Well, the audience was because Fox promoted that epised as one of these characters are going to die. Watch this show.
No way. That kind of rings a bell now. It's so weird that you say that.
We used to battle a little bit with the promotion department at Fox because we had cross purposes. They want to do anything they can to drive someone to watch it, and to do that, you're giving away our plot. What are you doing? And they used to do that a lot. And we used to have to. I'd go to Sandy Grushow and say, "Help me, please," and his background, and we would. Sandy had every job at Fox and ended up being the president of the network, and then the president of it again, a few years later.
Yeah, no, I get
All
that.
those people make movie trailers now and give away the entire plot of a movie in 30 seconds.
Well, when that happens, it's a bad movie.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Because if they're talking the plot, they got nothing to do.
Nothing else.
It definitely scared the crap out of me as a kid that could happen, because I remember the scene is very, very. I mean, like the way they built it up too, guys, is that they built it up where it's like this kid, like Brian Austin Green is like the younger guy in the cast, right? And so he's got his buddy, and his buddy's kind of a little nerdy, and like no one's gonna go to this guy's house for his birthday party, and it's like you can just feel like the desperation in this house. Like the mom is like trying to have a birthday party for her son that like is not popular, and
16,
16, and it's very uncomfortable. And then he's hanging out in his dad's office or his dad's bedroom and pulls out a gun and goes, "Hey, check it out. I got this, my dad's gun. I'm a cowboy." And he like does like a little spin of the gun and it drops and he shoots himself and dies. And
in front of
Brian Austin Green.
Yeah.
And you're like, as an audience member who I've been watching the show since the first episode, I was like, well, yeah, but then he's going to be fine, right? Because he's in the cast. You can't just kill a main cast member. But you just can't kill off a main cast member. And then it like settles in that like that character is dead and then you're like no, there are no TV shows on right now that are doing anything like that. Like if that happened right now, it would affect kids in such an enormous way. I think it would make people more aware. I think I thought it definitely affected me and made me kind of like afraid of guns.
Also, Dave, everybody's always in that episode's always going up to David Silver and going, "How you doing, David? How you doing, David?" And finally he erupts on, and so the mic at the campus radio station is on, so everybody hears it. And he does say this one bit of wisdom that my collaborator, my wife Karen Rosen, wrote, which is basically, it doesn't matter what you say about someone after they die, it's how you treat them when they're alive. And that was for a 15-year-old kid crying to be able to say that. It had some power, and it was good. Man. So it's one. So we won an award for that one. And,
all right,
and it's known as the gun episode.
It really is. Tori Spelling, you got to fill me in a little bit on how this situation went down, because I know that you weren't there when she was cast, but how did this situation happen? Like, did he decide? Did Aaron say like this role is my daughter's role, and then he put her in? Or like you needed if you're going to have a gang, you needed a sidekick. So in the beginning, she was the sidekick, and she didn't have very many lines. Yeah. And in some of the early scripts for the first year, and even into the second year a little bit, but certainly the first year, I have the notes that Spelling would write because he would read every script we would do, and oftentimes, and he liked the scripts. He was mostly very positive to what we were doing. But often one of the notes was, lines for Tori, like, he related to 90210 as it was a vehicle for Tori. Got it.
And Tori, we gave her in the first season, we did an episode having to do with her establishing she had a learning disability. Mm-hmm. And that was just a drama part. And she was, getting a little edgy in this. And she did real well with that, but I think her place in the show changed on that episode of Prom, the one where Brenda and Dylan do it, and she comes out with this kind of mermaid costume that's so strange she can't even sit in a chair with it. So her plot is having trouble sitting in a chair with a ridiculous dress that she's got
comic
on.
Relief,
and she was very funny.
Yeah, she was hilarious,
and she really had that quality to her as the comedian. Yeah. And Aaron, we appreciate it. So then we started to really like writing for her a lot. She probably saved me, without you even knowing this, in some of the battles I could have had, because there were times I'm mad at the network, I'm mad at Spelling, they're mad at me. Because we're doing these political shows that have political content, and there's a blowback on stuff like that. And, I could go to the cast and rile them up. Jason, Luke, they're trying to stop us from doing this. But Tori's in the same room. No, I can't do that. So it held me from not doing that, and I was able to do the show for 5 years and not get canned.
Very smart.
So thank you, Tori.
I love that. What was her relationship like with her dad while they were doing it? Were they like pretty good together? Because I know that they had trouble later, that there was some weird, or maybe she had family. There was I know she's had all sorts of family dramas. But
there were family dramas, and there were family dramas then.
But of course, there's going to be family dramas.
But in terms of Tori and I rarely spoke about her character. She, when she had something to say, she would tell her dad, and then her dad would say, I happened to be talking to Tori,
right?
And I would hear it that way. So. Truthfully, in the cast, she was probably the one. She and Shannon were the ones I had least relationships with.
No, I got that. All right, yeah. No, you said it, so we got to jump to the woman herself, Shannon Doherty, who probably has she had more stories that were flying around about Shannon Doherty while that show was going on than anybody else. Like, I remember constantly hearing like, something crazy happened on set, Shannon Doherty, and then they just kept jumping at it. They actually, someone in our makeup department was paid by one of the tabloids to just talk about whatever was there and feed them stuff. We
figured that out eventually.
Oh my God.
A few, things, and they
crazy.
followed Shannon. And so it was very unfair. Here's an interesting thing. One of the people who really, like, with the Shannon report, and can you believe what this Hollywood girl is doing? It was a TV show that Fox had, ironically, in syndication called A Current Affair.
Oh,
Maury
yeah.
Povich's old show.
And no, I'm going to predate that.
Oh,
The
pre-Maury
guy
Povich.
who was there giving scowling reports about
Bill
what
O'Reilly?
Mr. O'Reilly. Yes,
Yeah.
it was. That's who it was. And so, so I always remember in that. Shannon was there was a lot of always drama. She wanted to be center stage a lot. I felt sorry for her then, because here's this girl, really cute. Lots of talent, lots of energy, very smart.
And she had
Would
been on
read-
that show with Wilford Brimley before.
Yeah, and he was not a good influence for her.
Oh.
Not a nice guy.
She got diabetes, and then she was on the show.
No.
Was he a bad influence?
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
What?
What?
Wilford Brimley?
Wilford Brimley, how do I say this without being libel?
Don't worry about it.
He doesn't really like the Hebrews in the business that he's in. And
likes
so,
Quaker Oats.
it was like, don't do things for the management, don't do this. And he built, after that show, you didn't hear that much about Wilford Brimley anymore because
He did that one movie with Tom Cruise, and then he did diabetes commercials, and then
That's it.
That he's
No, he
dead
did
now,
a
right?
great movie with Jack Lemmon, and Jane Fonda, China Syndrome.
Okay.
That put him on the map.
Yeah, but that was well
Wow.
before.
Yeah. But he, so I think it was a bad this. But Shannon, look, this is everybody knows this. It's hard to be a child star. She was a child star, and it's particularly hard to be a child star when the family is dependent on that child's income.
Yeah.
You don't have a childhood, so her childhood happened. And the rebellious phase everybody goes through happened with the tabloids chasing her all down.
Yeah, sure.
Did she say and do things that caused her problems with her fellow castmates, with the production company in this? We could spend the whole hour on it. But the fact is that the great thing about Shannon Doherty, more than any of, and I've never seen anybody do, so Shannon would come to the set, let's say in the first, second year particularly, when she was still really committed and interested. She'd come in and she'd go, what scene are we doing? Okay, we're doing this scene. What episode is this? It's this episode. Okay. And she'd look at it, and she would use the blocking to memorize the scene she was in.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't the major stuff, but I mean, she would do it that way. And she would always ask, unless she wanted to be released early so she could go to a rock concert, she would always ask to be shot second, so that the close-up would be for her at the end, so she could memorize and do it and all this.
Brilliant.
She never ad-libbed. She read every line the way it was intended to be, that it was written. She had incredible instincts, and I was really sorry that she didn't, as she progressed in her career, that she didn't get the kind of roles that could feature that craft she was just a natural.
Speaking of that, the cast of this show had so many huge names at the time that the show was out, and now that it's 20 years later, you look back at what else they've done 25 years later,
Wow.
and you look back at what has happened with some of them. Like, are you a bit surprised that somebody like, say, Luke Perry or Jason Priestley didn't go on to become like major Hollywood stars and other things? I mean, they've done other stuff. They've been working the whole time, but they never became like big movie stars and things like that. Does that sort of surprise you about some of the members of this cast? Like, they didn't get that chance to go ahead and become huge household names?
Not to take this just for 1 second. I feel like Luke Perry. I watched Luke in John from Cincinnati, which was a great show, but there was all sorts of problems with it, and you watched it going, God, he's so good, and you just want, I
I watched
you want
him in
more. You want to see more. You want to see.
He's in
like
a movie with Ashley Judd where he plays a bank robber. That's really good.
He's such
Yeah, that was a
talented
good
guy.
movie.
And like, I remember watching stuff like that. I'm like, oh, like, why don't we see more of him?
Well, what happens is what we talked about in a variation. It's what happened with when I was talking about Ian Ziering. he is, especially at that period of time, he looked the same as he was Dylan McKay.
Right.
So it was hard for audiences to see him in different ways. And I think, it's a rough business. I always said everything, I'd rather be lucky than good. You remember when I said, why did I get this job? It's because I was available.
Right.
What if
Yeah.
I wasn't available? What would be? And it's the same with an actor. You can't know. Look, there was nobody who expected Beverly Hills 90210. The order was for 12 episodes. We can't even get a story approved. This show's not going 12 episodes.
Yeah, you gotta
This
DOA.
is going to be. It's right. It's going to capsize. So you never know that this would be the one that would give all of us such a profile.
Yeah, absolutely. And you look, I mean, so many actors from so many, shows that were like legendary shows where the whole cast, everyone's super recognizable. It gets very, very difficult for them to
eventually
to be able to change their stripes and play somebody else.
It's really it's the character actors that are allowed to do. If you think someone like John Goodman.
Right.
John Goodman can be in part after part after part. First of all, he's a terrific actor, of course, but nonetheless, he's not the leading man.
Yeah.
And our two leading men, were they? If you look at them now, are they leading men in the dashing leading men way? And also, things changed. They were associated with television. And in those years, the line between television and features was almost like a wall.
Yeah, sure. It's changed a lot.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now it's just please anybody do anything and we'll be happy. But then it was really difficult. And as a television movie writer, there was no way that I was going to be ever taken seriously by the featurette business because I was a TV movie writer. It was a different feeling.
Yeah, totally.
And there was that divide. If you think about the young actors who at the time, who were the ones that were able to cross over? I can think of only two, Johnny Depp and Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah, it's very, very
So
few.
those were the two. And they weren't Jason Priestley and Luke Perry. It was those two guys. So,
Yeah.
it's timing.
What
timing
about
is everything.
What about Luke Perry? Can you tell us a little bit about what he was like?
Nobody was more committed to the character and the show than Luke.
He was so cool.
Luke used to call, I call it my morning wake-up call by Luke. Luke would call me to go over the whatever he was shooting that day and always asking for changes in the script of his dialogue. And oftentimes, so my feeling is that unless there was something specific about the language, either the rhythm of the words or something else, if you want to change the words up and I'm going to take away the same thing from it, I mean, whatever's going to be communicated in that scene is going to happen, say it in your own way. I don't care. Unless the line needs to be a certain way for whatever reason. So I used to say to Luke often, let's shoot it both ways. And Luke would go, okay, great. It took him about 3 years to realize that I never used the way that he wanted to do it. I always used the other. But
so smart.
But I admire him a lot. I remember once we're battling over a script, and he said to me, I said, what a writer would say, defer to the name on the page. And he said, I'm going to be this guy for the rest of my life. And so I need him to be a certain way. And especially after the show was now a hit and we would know we're grappling. But he really was a salt of an earth guy. You read about him. He's from Ohio. He came to L.A. He worked on laying asphalt on the street. He was in a soap opera. I mean, he was someone who was so far removed from the character he was playing, the rich boy at the Bellage Hotel. And I think that interesting tension he really tapped into.
Well, here's something. I'm sorry I keep jumping past you guys, but this has always been so interesting to me. When we were doing Big Time Rush, this Nickelodeon show, for the first year, the show was not on the air while we were shooting it. For the first season, we shot almost the first season without anyone knowing whether or not it was going to be a hit. And then it came out, and immediately it was the highest rated show Nickelodeon had ever had. Like it was premiere wise, like the numbers were insane. So they picked us up for like a back 9, and then they picked us up immediately for a second season. And everybody, the energy around the show started changing, and the attitudes of our cast started changing. And then like they went away. The cast went away between first season and second season to go on tour as a band and perform and open for like big giant people like Justin Bieber and all this stuff. And then they came back and they were totally different people. Now, I love these guys. I adore these 4 guys for life. But when they came back from being on tour and performing in front of 80,000 people at a time and stuff with Bieber and all these other guys, they were completely different guys. And their attitudes as far as like cars and their houses and money and like what kind of dog they were going to get and how that dog was going to be trained.
Their hat size changed.
Yeah. What's that?
Their hat size changed.
Oh yeah. Everything started changing with these guys. When did that occur with this show? Because there's got to be a point where everyone realizes that this show is like a huge, massive thing that's changing the culture. Like when did it?
I think there was a time in the. Oh, absolutely.
Oh yeah.
And I remember there was a Laker playoff game at the Forum, and I had season tickets, and and Jason come to the game with me. Mm-hmm. And Priestley is really concerned because we're already a hit. It's May, it's the Lakers, we're playoff, and we're already a hit. So Jason is thinking, God, I've got to walk there and be in public. I don't know. And we walk in there, and from where we ate, we had to walk all the way around to the seats and come up there. Nobody cared. And by the way, by the end of the time, Jason is talking to the woman next to him going, yeah, it's a show on Fox. I'm the but one of the things that really did cause a rift between particularly Jason and Luke is that because they were the young stars, Tiger Beat took them over, they were in all of the teeny bopper thing, and they did not want to be there. So usually what I say about, the Blaze podcast, give them a plug.
Blaze podcast is awesome. If you're a big 90210 fan, you got to check it out. It's incredible. They got lots of great people. And
what I once said to them is that there is almost nobody, I think except for Jenny Garth, that was involved with this show that didn't at one point feel the prevailing ambivalence that was undercurrent of everything that we were doing. That we couldn't do it the way that we wanted. We had a lot of, wanted to go deeper and edgier and couldn't really do that so much. And it probably was a good thing, quite frankly, because it allowed us to, have people watch the show, think they're going to be watching one thing, and oh no, it's about something different. Mm-hmm. And we enjoyed that. And there was a period of time before it really became a balls to the walls serialized television show, which it did in the high school, near the end of the high school, but certainly after that, once the college one. Even in the college years, you really didn't know, those who watched it really didn't know what the tone of a given episode was going to be. Were we going to be really lighthearted? Was it going to be a social issue? Was it going to be all about romance? Was a character in jeopardy? Whatever it would be. And so I liked that. I liked the fact that it would keep an audience guessing. Well, that is completely an anathema to a network that wants every episode to be a variation of itself.
Right, sure.
So after I left the show became much more fulfilled the expectations of the audience rather than pull the audience on a ride they're not expecting to go on.
Got it. But did you see them, as far as I'm sorry to jump back to this, but did you see them like argue about cars or about their lives, material things?
No, not at all.
None of that stuff?
No. Jason was a pretty good businessman, so he was investing in stock markets.
How old were these guys when this was happening? Like in their
Jason turned 21 while we were starting off on our second season.
Man.
So they were very young. Luke was a little older. Gabby was she was like 28, I think. Ian was 26. But Tori and Brian were barely 18.
Oh my God. Now, why were there no fat guys on the show? This is a big issue to me. I'm just kidding.
You never came in. What was that? You come in, you'd get it immediately.
I always like there's no fat guys. They need like a fat guy.
They're
like
Beverly Hills.
There's no fat guys.
Fat guy in Beverly Hills
There's
ever.
no fat
There's no fat guys in Beverly
They
Hills.
all get sucked out right away. They just
they're at the Pinkberry in Beverly
Right.
Hills. It's the only place you find them.
There's a lot of Persians in Beverly
There's
Hills.
a lot of Persians in Beverly Hills.
Persians?
Not a lot of Persians on 90210. I don't think. We could have used a couple. We could have used a couple Persians.
Yeah, well, if I one of the reasons I left the show when I did is I didn't have many more ideas for stories.
I get that.
Persians, fat guys. I could have stayed a whole year if I would have known you guys.
You know what else we would have?
That's like what they say about Larry David when he left Seinfeld. He's like, I'm out.
I'm out.
Got no more stories, and then he went and made a whole other show. But
Yeah, right.
yeah.
I think it's good that the show happened when it did because, and we talked about this a little bit with Seinfeld too, is that like technology kind of ruins a show like that. And when they tried to relaunch Beverly Hills 90210 on what network?
CW.
That was CW.
Mm-hmm.
Like technology kind of ruins a show like that. Like everybody texting and Snapchatting each other and stuff. Are you kind of with me on that? Because when we read through the script, it was so noticeable when she'd be like, "I'm working on my typewriter. Give me 5 minutes," and you're like, or like the other girl was like, "I got quarters for the phone. I promise," and you're like, man, oh man, if they had cell phones, so many things, Uber, there would be no drunken driving episodes.
In the first summer episodes we did, there was a scene where Jenny Garth is driving down San Vicente in Brentwood, and she's talking on her phone as she's in the convertible BMW, and the network called me, and one network executive, who I like, so I'm not going to say his name. And the show's gone now. You've ruined it. We want to make these kids ordinary kids, and you got one talking on a cell phone driving a car.
Hilarious.
Because it was brand new. So yeah, we did. But particularly in the college years, we integrated the computer age into our show. We did. Sure. We showed a chat rooms when we did an episode about the Rolling Stones in 1994. We did a parody of The Real World. So we were aware of what was coming. But it's interesting. I leave the show in 1995. In 2000, the show ends. It ended to some, it struggled in the ratings for a few years, but the ending, the final episode, did really well. So they wanted to do a kind of see if we can make it a movie franchise for Fox. So Spelling asked me to do that, and I come back to him with the way that I want to do the outline and the series and stuff, and I start talking about the impact of computers. 2000 already. Yeah. My daughter's 15 years old. I know seeing the impact of computers on social mores. Spelling was getting a little more older then, a little more successful, a little more cantankerous. And he goes, "No computers. No computers. You can't have computers." And fortunately, there was a variety. I remember sitting on the desk in the office we were in. I said, "Look at the headline, Aaron. Variety. It's about AOL. How can you not have us do computers? It's the world that these kids are living in."
We could have seen a movie where Dylan got catfished.
But he's kind of, I mean, it does take away some of that, the cell phone, because there was so much mileage you could get was, I'm going to meet you here, and then doesn't show up in this, because there was really, what would you do? What happened? And the suspense of all of that. Now it's, text me. I'm running late, or whatever it would be.
Well, listen, I threw a little poll out on Twitter of like some of the most, like, what people's favorite episodes were, and so I have a couple quick questions for you before we wrap this thing up.
Okay.
Dylan's dad exploding. That was a big one. It was very impactful on a lot of people. It was another big death on the show that people weren't expecting to happen. Can you tell us a little bit about this? How that went down and why?
Sure. Well,
or if you have any story about that particular episode when it happened.
Well, we wanted to. You have different things going on at the same. When you're telling a serialized story, and here's Dylan, and he's now with Kelly, and there's Brenda over here, and all this. And so, if you remember, after the dad does blow up, here's the two girls, and his girlfriend is Kelly, and Kelly can't comfort him at that time, and Brenda can. So why is he with Kelly and not Brenda? So it's that's still pushed through. But we were always looking for, what I wanted to do, oddly enough, Luke Perry said, you can't do this. And then I think they ended up doing it anyway. I wanted to make it that he didn't die in the blow up, and that it was an undercover thing for the FBI. And I wanted to take the crime thing in a different way. The crime thing, the fact that he had a father who was wealthy and embezzled came totally. My motto as a writer, by the way, is steal from the best.
Sure, yeah.
So I stole from Say Anything, and where Ione Skye's father was a crook, a criminal, and so I wanted that to be, and we lifted it and did it here.
Great.
But Luke said I couldn't bring him back because he heard we were thinking about it, because that's a really bad soap convention, and I don't watch soap operas, so I said, okay, if that's the case. But it was important, to know that, here's this guy, the Notorious, and you find out that's what you think he is, but he was actually a good guy trying to trap them. And the thing I think was what we were able to do in kind of Luke's life and, Dylan's life, is that the father, by blowing up that way, it looks like he's a bad guy, but at least Luke knew he was good. And we use that in a spiritual way, that oftentimes the image of the father would come to him, and at times of crisis, at other times as we would do the series.
Yeah. All right, here's another one. We got there was a question about Donna Martin Graduates, and I, if you don't mind telling the story that you told me about Ian Ziering during the taping of that episode, is that okay? Do you mind?
Absolutely.
All right.
Nothing to be ashamed of. So, as I said in the other night, what rhymes with graduates? How about masturbates?
Okay.
And if you're a professional virgin like Donna Martin was, somehow you can think about masturbation as a survival technique. And Ian Ziering is, he's always there. He is, trying to scramble it up and do it. So he started saying on the track, instead of, we had hundreds of extras there, you're starting to hear, they're not saying Donna Martin graduates, they're saying Donna Martin masturbates. And Priestley got right into it, and they're doing this and doing this. And I'm never on this. I'm on the set sometimes. I was on the set when the car blew up. I wasn't on the set for this one.
Amazing.
So, we're in there and we're listening, and the editor says, "Can you hear this on the track? I don't think. Listen to this." And I'm listening. And I go, "Oh my God, what is this?" And I bring in the other ones, and I just think, okay, it's kind of fun. We'll just put it here and whatever. We'll put it out there for. Well, Mr. Spelling at that point, he was older. He couldn't hear shit, so he didn't know what was going on. The censor didn't get it, so I believe, unless they've remixed it, you go back to that episode, listen closely.
Oh, so good. It's so good. All right. But before we wrap this thing up, just real quick, I know that you did a little work on another TV show. I know you've worked on a lot of TV shows, but you did work on Dawson's Creek as well. And that was such an enormous, massive show, and launched a whole bunch of people's careers that have, people who have, gone on to huge, massive success.
Why did they become movie stars? Yeah. And when you were saying before, why didn't the other group here become movie stars? It's that, Spelling used to talk about that stardust. Mm-hmm. And you really, I can tell you that meeting Michelle when she was 16, 17, she was, and Josh Jackson. I mean,
Yeah.
these were fully formed people, as was Katie Holmes. So so 3 out of 4 is not bad. James and I, we never really bonded quite as much as I did with the other 3.
Sure.
And it was nice. My wife ran into Katie when she was coming out of a department store in Beverly Hills, right at the height of her with the Tomcat thing. And Karen goes up to her and says, "Hi, I'm Chuck Rosen's wife from Dawson's Creek." And she got a big smile. I'm the one that told Katie, was sitting on a bench, like the show you described at Nickelodeon. Dawson's Creek was filmed and finished before it aired. So
Wow.
they went out of production before. So I'm down there in the last episode of the first year, and I'm sitting in, and I was more of like a guest star by that point because I wasn't as active in the day-to-day on Dawson's as I might have liked to have been. But there I was with Katie, and I said to her, "Katie, you got to remember, this is the last time you're going to be able to do this. Just sit on the bench with me and watch people go by. They don't know who you are. I think they're going to know who you are. I think you're going to be a big star."
Wow.
And she did.
God.
Well, I have to say thank you for that because your work on Dawson's Creek helped make Katie Holmes a star, and that allowed us to have Tom Cruise meet her, and we got to see Tom Cruise jump up and down an Oprah, and that never would have happened if it wasn't for Dawson's Creek. So I thank you
That's
for that.
100% true.
Yeah.
It really is.
I give you full credit for Tom Cruise becoming a lunatic on Oprah, and I thank you for it.
Yeah, I'll share that credit with Scientology, but yes.
I thank L. Ron Hubbard for it. That is
Man, oh man.
because that is
man.
one of my favorite things in the last 10 years.
Man, that was really changed the world. I love it. Okay, Chuck, where can people find you? Is there a place? Can they find you at your home? Where can they find? Where can they look you up if they want to see what's coming next in your life, or what do you have going on now in your life?
Well, I live in Venice Beach, and I just finished my first. There's a certain point I was writing a lot, and then you're not on the lists anymore, and so I used to call the entertainment business the remnant of what it was. Not quite as collegial, not quite too business focused. Too much competition, too many different things. When we did it, we were the main drag. You watched ABC, CBS, NBC, and Fox less than that. But we were it. There wasn't allowed to do the cables, which is who would watch that stuff, and that obviously changed. The business changed dramatically. And the kind of stuff that I gravitated to wasn't quite being done in the same way. And so I took a foray into tech. Not the wisest thing to do, but did that for a couple of years. I taught at UCLA in the writers program for a number of years, and would write scripts for television and get good praise, get agents out of it, get this, but really just not at this point in my career happening. And so, I can accept that because I get pleasure from the writing part of it, especially writing without having to worry about career.
Right. Sure.
So I have just today finished my first screenplay of the 21st century.
Wow. Amazing.
Because I write television all those years, but this is, not that many screenplays. And so this is a script set in the 1940s in Los Angeles and Las Vegas from 42 to 47. Could be called Stories My Daddy Told Me. But I really enjoyed it, doing it. And that's the thing about, getting the pleasure. So I live vicariously through my very successful daughter, Lindsay, and I'm waiting for her to get a show on the air so that I can become gainfully employed again.
I love it. So Lindsay is constantly directing. She
writes, she directs. She's Lindsay Rosen. The book is called Cherry. It'll be out on August 16th. Simon & Schuster. Check it out. It's getting incredible reviews. It's a wonderful book. In fact, it truthfully is what we did at 90210 in those early years in high school, 25 years later. It deals with female sexuality, teenage sexuality in a way that does her father and mother proud.
I love it. That's so great. What is she? What TV shows does she? She's directed a bunch of shows.
Well, not directing. She directed Cruel Intentions.
She's written, yeah.
And then Cruel Intentions, the musical.
Oh yeah,
which
of course.
And then it became Cruel Intentions, the television series, which is in limbo at NBC.
Amazing.
But she's been writing scripts. She's been writing plays since she's been 15, and so
Cruel
she's been
Intentions
doing it a long
is the one
time.
where Sarah Michelle Gellar made out with
Selma Blair.
Selma Blair.
Yes,
Yes.
One of my favorite scenes of the last 15 years in a movie.
I love that scene, and I love
You
this.
and every other heterosexual man. Yes.
I love it. And hey, Chuck, thank you so much for coming and being a part of this. This
My
is
pleasure.
amazing, and it was so cool to take a walk through one of
zip
our
code.
favorite shows. Yeah, through the zip code.
That was what it'll say on my tombstone. He changed the way America looked at the zip codes.
100%.
Absolutely.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
You bet. Talk to you soon.